Well, I would say what I think a lot of the pictures do, which is I think the ultimate for a bird picture, is it captures the essence of the bird. You know, you can't top that. If you can look at the picture and someone says, wow, you captured the essence of that bird, you know, in that picture, you know, that's the ultimate compliment, I would say. So I've heard that. In my 30s and 40s, I read a lot of spiritual books. I read the Dhammapada, which is the things the Buddha said, you know, over and over many times. So eventually I got to the point, I think, where I relaxed enough and opened my heart, where I took one step. So I took my one step, and God took 9 steps toward me. So I'm meeting up with God. We're meeting up in something that's out in front of me, but still in this world. So we're meeting in the birds. I'm meeting God in the birds. So I have a mystical relationship with the birds. Yeah, so we lived in San Francisco till I was 7. We moved over to Mill Valley in 1957, and it was like living out in the country back then. And then, you know, I don't think I ever even had a profound thought until I was about 30. And I went through the spiritual books pretty fast, all the right ones at the right time. And then I went into despair, you know, that I just couldn't see how, out of billions of people, one person gets to be enlightened, and I didn't see how I was qualified. And so that took me up into my early 50s. I mean, I was pretty happy. I think happier than most people, but you know, there was always that undercurrent of, like, you know, knowing that I should be doing something more spiritually than I was doing. But I spent most of my time outside. I mean, I've been a gardener, and I think that really helped me with the birds. All I did was play outside when I was a kid, and then I've worked outside. I'm outside all day, every day, and I think it gave me, like, compared to someone who, like, spent most of their life inside buildings and cars and stuff, it gave me, like, a natural ability to move around birds and not scare them, just because I was kind of like an outdoor creature like they were.
Look at that baby. Whoa, ah, yeah. Whoa, oh, oh, ah, yeah. Got woke this morning by Mr. Sun shining through my window. I say hello, sun. I say hello, sun. Oh yes, I was so glad to see the sun come shining through. I got out my bed, I've got a lot of things to do. If I should waste time, I'd be behind the line. And who's to tell, I might even lose my mind. Oh yes, whoa, oh yeah.
His voice is just so beautiful. And then I realized that every time I heard him, I was in direct contact with God. And so God was coming to me in Don Carlos' voice and the music, and it was like so joyous, and it made me so happy. It made me realize that that God wanted me to be happier, and so he sent me that music. And then we went to the Sierra Nevada Music Festival, and Don Carlos was there. So I got down in front, and I was trying to take some pictures of Don Carlos, and people were bumping me and stuff, and I forgot that you're supposed to focus the camera. You have to press down this little button to focus. But I took several pictures of them, and of course they all came out completely blurry, and you never knew you couldn't even tell it was a person. except one picture came out absolutely perfect. And there's Don Carlos. And so Don Carlos, like, paved the way for all the bird pictures that were going to come through my camera. So this camera is the Panasonic Lumix 150. A lot of the pictures were taken with the very first camera, which was the FC20, and they now have a 200 out, and so the 150 or the 200 are all good, both good. So it's like about 580, if you know what that means. It has a lot of zoom, so it's like 580, I guess it's millimeters. And I don't know anything about cameras really, except I know how to use this camera. And most of the pictures I get, my secret, if I have a secret, is I get really close to the birds, usually less than 10 feet. And I don't really want a lot of sunlight, and so I use the flash, which lights them up, you know, gives you that incredible detail. And I adjust the flash and the exposure, and so that if I get the perfect balance between those two and I'm really close, then I can get a really great picture with this camera. And I've never had any bird react to the flash, not once ever. So the first time something really outrageous happened was when I just got my camera about 6 months before, and I went to Costa Rica, and there were scarlet macaws up in this tree. And so all of a sudden, these two scarlet macaws kissed each other. So one kissed the other one. Then they hung upside down and looked into each other's eyes, madly in love. Then they started spinning around sideways like hands on a clock. Then they hooked up together and started turning around upside down, hooked into each other. And they ended up as one upside down bird, and you cannot see any beak or you can't even really see their feet. So you can't tell that it's two birds. And I'm wondering, what the hell were they thinking? What were they doing? I mean, so this picture is, yeah, it's totally amazing, and that's when I realized anything could happen when I started taking pictures of the birds. But before that, we're going to Brunei's Fountain, which is one of my gardening customers, and so he let me put a box in front of his fountain, and all these birds would take a bath. I got great pictures. So this one is the spotted towhee, which is one of the most beautiful birds from around here, and you never get close to him, but he had no idea I was sitting there, so he was taking a bath. They're always hiding under a bush or something. And then the next one was a yellow warbler that came through on migration, and she got her skirt wet, so she had to pull up her skirt. So after I took that picture, I kept hearing a motorcycle going around, and all of a sudden these two cops busted in to the front yard and rushed me, and they started to rip the box off of me, and I yelled, "Hey, you know, you're ripping my box," and they jumped back. So I talked to them, and they were okay with it. You know, they realized the people were in Hawaii, but they were okay with, you know, the guy said, if nobody else complains, nobody else, you can stay. And I thought, well, great, you know. So as it turned out, a real estate guy was showing the house across the street, which is slightly elevated, and so nobody could really see me, even though walking by or driving by, you know, there was right by the sidewalk, but there were all these plants. So this guy saw me, and he saw me pulling my box over me, and so he called the Tiburon police and said there's a homeless man pitching a pup tent in these people's front yard. And so my police report in the Tiburon newspaper, they didn't use my name, but it said, like Ansel Adams, man. This box is way, seen it better days, I'm making a new one. But this is how the homeless man Bitches is pup. And then I can just take the picture right out there.
And you could see?
Well, I need to open up this.
When did you start using a box?
If the bird's right down there, I can see them.
Yeah.
So I can use either one of these holes, but the last time I used it, I was using this hole. So I would actually have it kind of like that. And like right now, if the bird's where your foot is, I can see them. Yeah, you can.
A few feet, okay.
You can get great pictures like that. I mean, the birds just see it as an inanimate object.
Uh-huh.
And you know, as long as they don't see me moving the camera through the hole, you know.
And you don't have to use them on the bluebirds, though.
No, a lot of birds I don't have to use them. You know, most of the birds over there in the city I don't have to use them, but there's some that we do.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's like they say, necessity is the mother of invention. Well, I was trying to get pictures of orioles a few years ago a few yards down, and a lady let me do it and put the box. And I thought, you know, the only way I'm going to get close to them is if I have a box. So I made the box. And now I just got some of the best oriole pictures in the history of planet Earth because they come to some flowers right outside the window in the computer room. Yeah. So I went from sitting in a box a few years ago, getting dehydrated, suffering. I couldn't even wear a shirt, it was so hot, miserable, to sitting in my own room, orioles right next to the window on beautiful red flowers, sipping nectar, and I'm drinking coffee and Pellegrino. So that's how much better things can get.
And that's good.
Yeah. With a lot of birds, I've been able to get close to them, and they let me take their picture, and I can hear them say, you know, if somebody was going to ask them, why do you let that guy? And they say, you know, well, he never gets close. He never gets closer than 7 feet, you know, so they're okay with that. And with the hummingbirds, it got down to the point where they said, well, that guy, he never gets closer than 1 inch. So this was Fabio. So Fabio's singing, and then I held the flowers. I could hold the flower in one hand when they were perched, and my camera's light, so I'd take the picture one-handed. So I would hold the flower up to their face, and they would feed on the nectar, and then I would take the picture, and there's Fabio. I'm holding the flower. Has anybody ever done that? And then, after he left, Princey Boy, a full adult male. Fabio was a subadult male. He was just getting his color. Princey Boy, oh man, he was... So here he is preening from 1 inch away. I mean, birds don't preen, you know, usually if you're 10 feet away. You know, they have to feel safe. And here's Princey Boy with his beautiful color. And then here's Princey Boy with me holding up a Mexican sage flower in one hand and taking the picture of the other. And then I was also able to do macro on a hummingbird in Golden Gate Park, an Allen's hummingbird, which is a beautiful orange hummingbird. And it took me a day to make friends with him. I think some birds actually get more relaxed with me standing there because they know with me standing there that a hawk's not going to come and get them. I'm like a big scarecrow. And so they can plop down and take a sun bath with me as like a protection. You know, I mean, I know bird people would say that I'm totally deluded and I'm nuts. But I actually think that happens sometimes. I guess what I mean by bird people would be the people that their philosophy is total non-interference with the birds. And so what I'm doing is trying to get close to birds is taboo. It's just not something that they think anyone should be doing. It's not good for the birds. And they don't know anything about making friends with a bird. They've never done it. So, and I think people are afraid of what they don't understand. You know, people always say that. And so, you know, there's these guys, they're like, they're kind of like the religious fanatics in terms of. I've met some of these guys, like I mean, I think they love birds. You know, I do. You know, but they're like religious intolerant in that they think their way of loving the birds is the only way, and you know, there's probably as many ways to love birds as there are people. You know, so that's. Yeah, the whole thing basically comes down to why these people are down on me. From the woodpecker tree down there. This last summer happened. The year before that, the woodpeckers were nesting there, and I made friends with them. I was feeding them mealworms. They were feeding the baby. Everything was fine. They had time to, like, instead of hunting all the time for food, they could just sit up in the tree and fall asleep in the sun, preen themselves. The baby always had enough to eat when I was around. They had enough to eat. Made their life a lot easier. And then one day a lady drove by, it's right by the road, and saw me taking pictures. And she was a bird photographer, and I can only assume that she told her friends, because pretty soon there were people lined up out there all day long with big cameras, and it's on the road to the pond, so the Audubon guys were going by, and they were freaking out. And it wasn't good for the, you know, the woodpeckers, because these people, the woodpeckers knew me. You know, that's the whole thing about making friends with a bird. They know, and they've done studies with mockingbirds. And it goes in Florida, and they proved that the mockingbirds know specific people as opposed to other people. So the woodpeckers knew me. They weren't afraid of me. I'm sure they liked me putting the mealworms out. And these other people were scaring them. You know, it didn't stop them from raising a healthy baby, but you know, it was horrible, because they'd come in, fly in with food, and they'd be afraid to go into the hole, you know, to feed the baby. You know, they'd start to go and they'd go back, and because all these people were there with their huge lenses and stuff. And so these people came by from the Audubon guys, what I call the Audubon guys, and complained to the rangers from McGinnis Park, and they blamed me for everything. And I just don't see how they can blame me for what other people were doing. You know, I mean, I guess I'm to blame a little bit, but I don't really get it, how I'm the bad guy in that thing. So the woodpecker, the male Nuttall's woodpecker, drilled those lower 4 holes in succession spring before last, about a year and a half ago. And when he finally got to the lowest one, which is the nesting chamber, his wife was just sitting up in the tree almost the whole time. She approved the last one, and they finished excavating it, and they had 1 baby last year and 2 babies this year. And wouldn't be surprised if they come back next year.
Welcome to the Tiburon Library. This is a presentation of the program committee of the library. And now Gary.
You know, there's a lot of people that love to watch birds. They call us bird watchers. But actually the birds spend a lot more time watching us than we spend. After I'd been doing pictures for only about 2 years, one of my customers volunteered at the Tiburon Library, and so, you know, they're always having different speakers come in and doing different talks and stuff, and so I thought at that point I had enough pictures that I could do a show for an hour and a half. I don't know why I did it, really, other than just to share the pictures. So what I have, because I spent so much time with these birds, is I have this sequence of events of pictures where the birds are doing something interesting, usually seeming like people. I call them slice of life pictures, and a lot of them are funny. I think that's unique because most people aren't, whatever reason, they don't take those kind of pictures. They're not trying to make friends with the birds, and they're not trying to spend that much time with them to get those kind of pictures. Maybe they don't even know those kind of pictures are possible. So now we come to the bluebirds. The first picture is Mr. and Mrs. Bluebird from the first year. It's their anniversary picture.
Is that Hero?
No, that's his parents.
Oh, that's his parents. Okay.
Here's his parents, yeah. And then here's their prom picture. And then they were taking a sun bath there where I was feeding them. So there's Mrs. Bluebird taking a sun bath. Mr. Bluebird taking a sun bath. And then they like to take water baths. So there's Mr. Bluebird taking a water bath. And then Mrs. Bluebird was absolutely the best bird ever at taking a bath, getting wet, the most wet. So I mean, I can't even imagine how a bird could get any wetter than this. She was a genius at taking a bath. What a great bird. They were like my best friends for a few years. Mr. Bluebird picked up a couple of mealworms. She was in the nest box sitting on the egg. She came out and he was supposed to feed her, so he picked up a couple of mealworms in his beak, but they slipped down his throat. And she was absolutely beside herself. She was so mad. She's got her wing out going like, get those mealworms over here. So he picked up 2 more and she's just letting him have it. So that's Mad Wife. And then a few seconds later, it's Happy Life as he fed her. So then they had 2 babies that first year, a male and a female. I mean, I only saw 2 by the time they started bringing them around. I'm not sure where they nested. So this was the other baby. The first time I saw him, he was a male. And that's, his name became Hero. And now we come to the pictures with the Buddha. So this one's called, Wow, I Just Landed on the Buddha. This one's the Bluebird umbrella, because the spiritual master shouldn't be out in the sun. So the 2 young male bluebirds made an umbrella to shade the Buddha. And then this one is my favorite picture of all, the Bluebird and the Buddha. And so I look at this picture as being transcendental. It's in this world, but it's not from this world. And so if you look at the line of the Buddha's face and the bluebird, they match perfectly. So the bluebird of happiness is becoming one with the great Buddha. And another thing you can do is like put your hand over the Buddha, and you realize you've never seen a bird with a look like that on his face. So it just so happens, I mean, just by pure chance, that look is with a bird cuddling with the Buddha. I mean, what are the, you know. I'd like to see people looking at, I think the world would be a better place if lots of people were looking at these pictures, especially the Bluebird and the Buddha. And Don Carlos has a song where he goes, every minute, every hour, I'm gonna praise Jah with love and affection, and He'll shower us with blessing. I'm gonna make the heathen love Jah. Whoa, oh, oh, oh. So that's what I'd like to do with the pictures, is make the heathen love Jah.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna give Jah praises each and every hour of the day. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, Jah love is strong, you see. Only Jah love can set us free. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Every minute, every hour, I'm gonna praise Jah with love and affection. He will shower us with blessing. I'm gonna make the heathen love Jah.